Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Marijn.
Hey,
How are you doing?
great.
Good stuff. So, welcome everyone. My name is Enrico. I'm from Avans Coperta, and I'm here today with Marijn, and we are gonna talk about his latest workshop with us called, as you can guess, Practical Strategy for Digital Organizations, which is OKR and Wardley Mapping in disguise. But
Yeah,
let's leave the official title
yeah, yeah,
for the time being. Really happy to have Marijn back with us. I remember we did one workshop together in 2019. It was the last one before, the whole COVID madness. We were in Milan in our old venue, Istituto Pirelli, which we loved. Now doesn't
right.
exist anymore. So lots of memories. Back then we were talking about DDD, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah. Well, event sourcing tooling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very geeky, but a lot of fun. I have fond memories. Yeah,
It was amazing. I also have those memories, and it was great to have you with us. And I'm even more grateful that we can reconnect and do another workshop together. This time is going to be remote. So, like the majority of our workshops, this one will take place in May, and it's going to be remote and in live streaming. So, I'll leave you all the details later on to check out the website description as we go along. Now, as usual, when we do the small talks, we love to have your contributions from home. So feel free to drop your questions down here in the YouTube chat. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know more about our next events. And I guess I've done all of my blah blah right now. So off we go. So I have one
all right.
question for you, Marijn. I didn't ask before. Are those real plants or is it a perfectly looking background?
Oh no, these are real. These are real plants. These are real plants. Yeah. So yeah,
Amazing.
that's yeah. It was one of those things that was long on my to-do list when I started to rent the office here, and once I had them, I was like, I should have done that a lot sooner. So
Good stuff.
anybody that doesn't have any plants in their office space, I highly recommend getting real plants.
So see, we are already learning something from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, Marijn's new workshop, Practical Strategy for Digital Organizations, is basically OKR and Wordly Mapping in disguise. So
Yeah.
in small talk events, we always like to start from the basics. Now, I know it would take 100 hours to describe what this is in full details, but let's get a quick overview of what we are talking about exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think about strategy, it comes in, well, it has different phases, right? And one of them is sort of defining strategy, but the other side of it is implementing strategy. And I think the way this workshop works effectively for people is that there's an aspect to it that is all about finding a right strategy and challenging a strategy that already exists in an organization, using Wardley maps and all of the associated principles and heuristics that come along with this body of thought. And then on the other side, in order to implement that strategy in an effective way within an organization, and more specifically in an organization with a lot of software, so a digital organization, a methodology like OKRs can be effective if and only if the objectives are truly capturing an outcome that is desired rather than an output that we want to achieve, right? Yeah.
So yeah, you already mentioned output versus outcome, which is one of those things you always hear when talking about OKR. Of course, I
Yeah.
would say
Yeah.
a big stress, of course, is in the strategy part. So of course, you need to first understand where you want to go, and then try and get there. Really.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And part of like knowing where you want to go is also knowing where you don't want to go and understanding why you're not doing that right now. So Simon Wortley talks about that a lot in the form of there's two forms of why. And there's the why of purpose, like why are we trying to solve a problem in the first place? Like what are we trying to achieve as an organization? So purpose. think Simon Sinek, but also why here over there. So why are we doing this one thing and not any of the other options that are available to us? And this is something that becomes really easy to talk about when you have a map, because a Wardley map allows you to visualize the options in a single picture and point at things and say, well, we could also do something over here. So it allows us to weigh the pros and cons. And as a consequence of that, if something changes in our environment, which it inevitably always ends up doing, we can reassess the situation and wonder, okay, the change that happened, did that actually affect any of the ingredients that we had to use in order to come up with this strategy? And if that's the case, then we maybe want to reassess right now. And if that's not the case, then we know that we are dealing with a mere distraction, and that we should just keep on focusing on the course that we've set out, and not be distracted by all of the shiny things that come along while we're trying to do something else.
This is actually also another common topic we often hear here at the Avans Copertas meetups and workshops, which is not to be, how to say, how could I say, the enthusiasm of new shiny things sometimes is very charming, but one of the key points, as you exactly mentioned right now, is make a plan, stick to it, and go to the end of it, which of course it's sometimes one of those easy yet difficult things to do, right? Because new stuff, clients asking you to do stuff, or external changes which you cannot control. We've seen that with COVID, of course, that was a force majeure, as we say, but generally speaking, companies do tend to, take commitments when I would say they shouldn't, or they don't follow what you said to yourself when doing the strategy and according to the overall objectives. So I guess when you visualize things, that can be of help, of course.
Yeah, most certainly. So I've seen that while doing things like Wardley mapping, but also context mapping with clients, where if you then start to also assign responsibilities for various areas, it starts to become clear that we're just simply doing too much. And having that picture allows us to have a conversation with people that are in a position to make decisions about these things, right? And as Alberto Brandolini obviously frequently says when he's talking about event storming, right? Having the artifact results in pointing at the map rather than pointing at each other, and that's very helpful.
I also wanted to quote Alberto, who we say hello to, of course, when he says, "I don't like to discuss invisible things." So you need to see things and to make sure you are seeing them, to basically talk about them, see where we are going in terms of strategy. That is in another context, but yet it applies very much here as well.
And that's actually that's actually how this whole thing started, was me having that sense of discomfort, as some client of mine handed me a strategy which was basically a PowerPoint slide of a PowerPoint presentation with like 17 slides, font size 10, no pictures. Like, wait, what is this? What am I looking at? And so I took that thing, I turned it into a Wardley map. But this organization used objectives and key results as a framework to think and reason about strategy implementation. And what I realized is on the map, the hypothesis and actually the actual objectives that we're trying to achieve were not on there, and I started to put them in. And that was really helpful, because we could now talk with different stakeholders about the fact that, some of these hypotheses that we had in order to achieve a particular outcome were related to things within our ecosystem that were actually difficult to change, or where people would have different priorities. So even though we could maybe theoretically do it, practically speaking, for this organization, that was never going to happen in the next few months. And so not having an invisible thing, but rather having something visible, allows you to have those conversations, and allows a stakeholder also to have a eureka moment, like, yeah, I see that theoretically we can do it, but practically speaking right now it's going to be difficult. Yeah.
So did I get it right? And the combination of Wardley Mapping and OKR happened casually before your eyes?
Yeah.
It
Yes.
was not planned.
No, it was not planned. No.
I mean,
was,
you didn't think like, okay, these two things make sense together.
No, it
Wow.
was just it was born out of a sheer need. Yeah.
Amazing.
And so this was in a situation where the organization had already had objectives and key results, and I leveraged those to start to visualize them and also to challenge some of them a bit, because I had my own perception of how reasonable these objectives were, and whether they were also the right thing to do, given what the organization could also be spending the energy on. But then it started to make sense as like, wait, you can also do this proactively, right? This was reactionary. I was doing this as a consequence of not understanding what was going on. But if you start to do it proactively, you can create a marriage between the definition of strategy, but also the implementation, where these things go hand in hand. And I think a lot of people find it difficult. That they can see sort of the value of a Wardley map, or of something like event storming, but then bridging over into implementation. Okay, I have to write code for this event storming thing, or now I have to implement this strategy. I have to do stuff. That's where they sort of get at a loss. They are unable to make the jump from that artifact into this other world. And by putting that in the same picture, I hope that you remove that to some extent. Yeah.
I think it makes perfect sense, and I can wait to see that in action next May. Which leads me to another question. So you mentioned about how this happened with a company that was already working with OKR. So in your experience, or let's say desired audience, is this aimed to this approach and workshop? Is it aimed to some kind of company which is already mature in some practices they are doing, or can it be useful for some people that are just, let's say, looking for a way to get on track, make sure strategies then executed?
Yeah. So no, there's no, on either topics, no pre-existing knowledge is required. So you'll learn the basics of Wardley mapping and the basics of objectives and key results. So there is no pre-existing knowledge required, or experience for that matter. I've actually seen OKRs being implemented only once, where I thought like, okay, this is done pretty nicely. Here it's really outcome oriented. In a lot of situations, what happens is it's a decision higher up in the organization. We're going to use OKRs. And then what happens is all of the existing projects just get sort of OKRified, where we imagine what the objective. Yeah, I've really seen things like make a plan as the objective, and that's not really outcome oriented. What we're trying to do is want to make sure we achieve something that propels the organization forward, and not having some kind of vanity metric that is basically saying, okay, I've produced something, unless that thing has added value for the organization, provable added value in the form of some key result, in the form of some indicator that our performance has improved. You're fooling yourself a bit, and that's the mindset that you can expect from this workshop. Is really all of these things, they have their place, they can be very valuable, but I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. You should not be using Wardley maps for everything. You should not be using OKRs for everything. And there's a time and a place where they can be very valuable.
Now, remember when we were writing the workshop description, this was one of the key points. So we are going to also learn when you should not do that. Because it's not about selling you, OKR and Wardley mapping, but see in your context where you are and use it if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And one of the things that also happens a lot with objectives and key results is, we think of one objective and then we think of three more, but actually the best way you can leverage this is to just have one objective and to sort of really rally around the flag with everybody, and really focus on this one thing, and do that very well, right? And then have some level of health metrics that that you aren't burning any bridges in the process. It's great if we create a new product proposition, but if we lose all of our existing clients, we're probably not going about it in the right way.
Yeah.
And so, having that, some of those, stories to share, I think will be very helpful for the people that will be attending the workshop.
Yeah, and just these days we are doing the OKR for people and companies workshop with Francesco Fullone. Francesco, we are here, and he just said something like this today. I overheard it, and it was once you go with OKR, you don't need to have like 1 million. Actually, the fewer you have, just stick to them, because it also links back to what we were saying before, right? Let's just have projects and initiatives and what's not, and then never finish anything. So that's kind of not where you want to go. Hey, Fullo, here he is. Ciao.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, who is this workshop for? This question went to a direction I didn't envision before. What I wanted to ask you is which kind of people would actually benefit from it, apart from the maturity of an organization?
Well, I think anybody that is up for challenging strategy making and implementation in the organization that they work for, right? So you could be somebody that is, working in the engine room, but still, by attending this workshop, I think you'll gain a set of tools that allows you to challenge, some of the really poor strategies that are out there in organizations. A lot of strategies tend to be, whatever the highest paid person's gut feeling was initiating, basically. And sometimes those are good because those are very experienced people, but sometimes they're also terrible, and they lack sort of the situational awareness that you need in order to make a good decision. So I think for people that are at that lower level, it can be very valuable. Simultaneously, I think people at the top can also greatly benefit from this, to see like, okay, how can I bridge my vision back to implementation land, where people have to work on it and where they understand my reasoning, and where also we have a better collaboration between those functions. So there's no unfortunately, for marketing purposes, it would be a lot better if we could just say it's like, join if you're this person. But I guess saying it in one sentence is just people that think that there is more to achieve with a better strategy.
Cool. Excellent. Now, we were talking about, of course, the power of visuals. I know we were trying to share something, but we won't today. Is there anything else you can mention as with regards to how is this going to happen during the workshop? Of course, we are going to be on Miro, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So it will be highly hands-on.
Okay.
So for the Wardley mapping aspect, we'll make sure that we very quickly get to a point where you actually make a map. One of the biggest problems with Wardley mapping is that people don't start actually mapping. So I'm going to put you in a pressure cooker, and we're going to make sure that you start mapping right away. But obviously, it's going to be a learning context, so we're going to do it in small steps. But those small steps will really result in you being able to do that yourself, right? You'll learn, okay, actually, if I take these smaller steps, I'll get to a map within half an hour or an hour, rather than sort of it being this daunting exercise. One of the things that I also really want is that people feel confident enough that they can do this on their own, on something of their own. So they'll actually demonstrate that they can make a Wardley map on a topic that is dear to them. So something that they know themselves. And And the same applies to the objectives and key results section. We'll be very active there. A lot of it will revolve in that case around phrasing, because the line between outcome and output is only a few words, and so we're going to experiment with that a lot, and obviously also really dive into the silent H of OKRs, which is health metrics, which I find a very very under emphasized topic. I hope to make sure that people see how that can really benefit a process where we really focus on just one objective with a few key results and having a few health metrics to make sure that we don't drive the organization off a cliff. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, by saying we're actually gonna do a map, we already have something that we will actually do at the end. Also, because Wardley mapping sometimes is it's in a fog of wouldn't say not understandability, but sometimes it can get a bit complicated to actually get to do one. And by doing this, I think it's a good point.
But you just have to get started really.
Absolutely.
And your first map won't be brilliant, but it will be good enough to ask better questions. And then based on that, you'll be able to make maybe a better map that will allow you to make better questions, or to just, actually start to act within your landscape, because that's why we're doing it, right? We don't do it to make perfect maps. That would be a bad goal, right? What we're trying to achieve is a better outcome for our organization.
Now that you said this, I think it's in your workshop description. It's about it's more important to do a map and the conversation around it than the perfect map.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's start basically. Now let's go with a question from the audience. Thanks, Sasha. When you create OKRs for pioneer stuff versus town planner stuff, I guess the KR quality is fundamentally different, learning versus executing. How do you merge it all in a coherent set of higher levels? Thanks, Sasha.
That's a lovely question. Well, so one of the things that you could imagine is if we're pioneering, right? So if we're some kind of startup and we're pioneering in something, I have an example of that. So this is completely not a digital organization at all. So a few years ago, I was talking to a friend, and we were discussing the fact that it's so food-wise, we're nutrition-wise, we're heading towards a situation where the world population is growing, and we don't have enough animal protein to actually be able to feed everyone, right? And so there's a lot of things happening where we feed a tremendous amount of fish to cattle, etc. So there's a problem there, and one of the potential solutions there, outside of plant-based protein, which is lovely, but is protein made from larvae, black soldier larvae, actually, black soldier fly larvae. They contain a lot of protein, and so we were getting interested into that topic. And so, but you have to change people are not just going to eat that, first of all, because there's regulations around it. But recently, we can start to feed these things to other animals, right? Now, if you think about it, an organization that would pursue a product like that, right? Basically, their only objective is finding product market fit, right? That is their objective. And we can start to think of a few key results, but they are basically around cash flow, right? Because if you don't have enough cash, your business is going to end. Around a significant number of customers, that is significant enough that you could gain more funding to actually increase the success rate of this organization, right? And we could talk a bit more about some more key results that would be helpful for an organization like this, but that gives you a feeling, I suppose. And they wouldn't really need another objective at this stage, right? So there you could really see that you're pioneering. And now, obviously, if you're part of a bigger organization, we might say that we want to create a coherent story across all of these different sections on the map. But I think that sometimes it might actually be easier and clearer for the people involved to just focus on that area specifically, and have to not fall for the trap of having these sort of cascading OKRs where we're saying like, okay, we have a parent company and that has a particular purpose and a set of key results. Because one thing that's been pretty clearly proven now by the objectives and key results community is that cascading OKRs just don't really work. It's very difficult to pull it off effectively, which is just to make sure that everybody knows what it is, where we define objectives and key results at some level, and then the levels that are below that, they'll define their own objectives and key results, and then the levels that are below that, they'll define their own. As you could imagine, like the parent company, and then the company, and then maybe a department, and then sometimes teams, and then even individuals. That doesn't work. And then you also run into these problems where it gets difficult to tell a coherent story that makes sense. So I hope Sasha feels that this question is answered by this to some extent. But it's a great question.
We'll see. If not, Sasha, please do write us back. I found a quote, which I quoted bad, of course. Mapping with imperfect knowledge today is better than mapping with perfect knowledge next year. Yeah. Pretty sensible.
Yeah.
Makes
because the thing is, if you have perfect knowledge today, something unexpected could happen. If this decade has told us anything, it's that a pivot in the environment can happen just about any time. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay. Nice, Barbara. Thanks, Barbara. Right now, can a Wardley map also provide a visualization of what changes you would require to change your strategy and or measurements?
I have to read it again. Sorry.
Yeah, do that. No worries.
Can a Wardley map also provide visualizations of what changes would require you to change your strategy and measurements? So I'm not 100% confident if I understand the question correctly, but one of the things I really like about Wardley mapping is that you can visualize change in a single picture. So in general, you can visualize change or the required change very effectively. And you can also visualize the fact that some forces in the organization are actually making that change more difficult in the form of inertia. Right, so that's on the map that looks usually like a little black block on the arrow of change. You can definitely visualize change effectively. And if we're talking about the strategy itself, like maybe at a higher level, in other words,
Sorry, I was mute.
Yeah.
In other words, when you map a strategy, can't you identify what changes will require you to pivot?
Perhaps. I suppose it's possible, but I wouldn't immediately have a way to visualize it. I don't immediately think of a way to visualize that right now, but I think if we play around with it for a bit, it certainly should be possible. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Marijn, and Barbara again, if needed.
Yeah.
You can clarify.
Yeah.
Now, you just made a very nice example when answering Sasha's question, which leads me to the next one that I had prepared, which is, in the title, we talk about digital organizations only. We know that every company is a software company and what's not. But is it only for this kind of companies? You just showed us an example, so I have the answer, but I'd like to dig a bit more.
Well, yeah. So the point is, I think it's going to be difficult to find an organization that is not
somehow
somehow constrained by software. Right. Yeah. So sure, there might be some examples, but I think it will definitely be valuable also for people that are not necessarily producing their own software, for example, but purchasing a lot of it, from vendors that facilitate a particular problem, solve a particular problem very effectively. So yeah, it's not just for engineering organizations, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, we're about to close. So if you have any other questions, please drop them in the comments. I'll leave you with the link to the workshop.
Yeah.
In case you want to find out more about what this is on our website. And we also like to close with some suggested readings or videos. So how can we get to know a bit more about all of this?
Yeah.
Other than coming to your workshop, of course.
Well, well, if people want to read more about either of these topics, objectives and key results, or Wardley maps, well, Simon Wardley produced a lovely book on Wardley maps. Just start reading it. It's actually there's like 18 or 20 published chapters. It shows a lot of examples of maps. It's not the type of book that tells you like, here's how you map. It will take you through a lot of practical applications, and from that you can infer how you can use some of these tools yourself. A wonderful book that actually was the book that got me into objectives and key results is Radical Focus, and I think about a year or two ago a new edition of that was published. It's by Christina Vodke, and it's actually a story. So this is also first and foremost a story that will show you how objectives and key results can be used effectively or not effectively in an organization, because it will go into both of these sides of OKRs. And then there's also some material in there on how to run a workshop, for example, to define objectives and key results. And if you're interested in seeing how you can combine these topics a bit more in depth, then there is a presentation that I gave a few months ago in Berlin at a lovely conference called Kandinsky, where I showed how you can combine these two topics. So those are definitely three lovely resources to see either of these topics individually or together. Yeah. You're on mute. It's inevitable, right? We have to have that moment where it's like, okay, Mr. Bezos, you're on mute. Yeah.
3 years of remote learned nothing. So as I was mentioning, the links, as I was mentioning in my room on my own, the links are in the comment section. I'll also put, in the YouTube chat, I'll also put them in the comment section later on. And I would say thanks a lot, Marijn, for being with us, answering our questions, and anything
it was my
you
pleasure. Yeah, well, join us, right? I look forward to having a group of people that are enthusiastic about this topic. We already sold quite a few tickets, so it's going to be I think we'll have a lot of fun. And obviously, we'll learn a ton as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So the workshop, as Marijn said, has already some tickets sold. So it's pretty much, we can say, confirmed. So we know this can be an incentive sometimes if people are not quite there yet. But rest assured, we will do this in May, remotely and online. So we'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks a lot. And to the next one, we'll talk again next week with Matteo Cavucci about product roadmaps. And in 2 weeks with Sara Pellegrini, with a very, she said it's going to be very disruptive talk about aggregates. So we go back to our DDD world. It's going to be in Italian, but I've seen that she's preparing a lot of captions, so in English. So rest assured, you probably can follow this along as well. And well, thanks a lot to everyone, and we'll see you soon. Barbara, no need to say sorry. Thanks a lot. Your questions were awesome, and they are the best part of our conversations with experts. Thanks a lot, and to the next one.
Ciao.
Bye bye.